Make a point.
Signing off this week on Boozing Through Lit. Fuck a duck.
So this weekend, I watched a movie randomly. Not so randomly, actually. Over the course of the weekend, I coincidentally watched Independence Day. Resurgence, the sequel to the fantastic Independence Day with Will Smith. Partially because it's very difficult for me nowadays to watch anything that's too engrossing. I'm not even sure what that is. We could probably talk about that at another time. But in the movie, there is this character, this actress, who is from China. And it's the whole purpose of this character is to try to create like the world has come together, unity. To come together following the last alien war. And now we are one. And it made me think of other films, like that movie that Matt Damon did. I don't remember what it was called, but he got like $100 million to make this Chinese movie, right? To be that Western star in this Chinese movie where he's like fighting dragons or something like that. It's like a old historical film. And then there was Red Dawn, the remake. Do you remember anything about that? I didn't see it.
No, I just watched the remake. No.
But the studio put in an absorbent amount of money to go back in and Photoshop out all references to China. And we have movies that are being shot with extra scenes just for the Chinese market. Right? Like there's these weird characters in Iron Man. They're all these fluff pieces, right? But it makes me think, and it makes me worry about these films being complicit in a way. Mm-hmm. You know, like who cares about the films? But there's a parallelism to what these studios actually did during Nazi Germany as well, right? Well, I'm not comparing them necessarily to Nazi Germany. What I'm comparing them to is appeasing adversarial countries for the market share, for like the dollars. And if there is a word for me to encapsulate the entire year, if we're going through, like boozing through the year, it would be China. Mm-hmm. More than COVID-19.
Right.
More than Black Lives Matter, any of the other things that have been going on this year. But for me, China has seemed to have been kind of looming over and benefiting or dealing or part of all of this. When I say the word China to you, Brett, what comes to mind?
Power. That's really it. I mean, it's a line, I believe, paraphrased maybe from Bismarck, but it was in the television miniseries Chernobyl that aired on HBO last year. And fictionalized Gorbachev, is saying about the late Soviet Union, our power rests in the perception of our power. And if China cannot defeat the United States in a protracted military conflict, then it at least is acting as if it can, which I think is an important distinction. You know, destroying the two systems, one country, system that's been in place since 1997 in Hong Kong, trading shots with India, on the Himalayan border, gobbling up portions of the South China Sea by literally building islands out there.
Building islands, bases. Right. Yeah.
Building islands, building cities out in the ocean. And saying, fuck you, Thailand, fuck you, Vietnam, fuck all of you. You're actually existing by the grace of China right now, which the Chinese probably don't want another fight with Vietnam, given how badly the Chinese 2 generations ago got their derbies handed them by the Vietnamese when they tried to invade in 1980. Not a lot of people talk about that, but it's of course Hollywood is sucking Chinese dick. Of course they are. Of course, there's a lot of yuan involved. Mm-hmm. China will not allow movies that disparage China into their theater market. Of course not. Mm-hmm. And this is part of a larger discussion I think we could have with America in general, why America is actually sick. It's sick because its soul is sick. We care too much about fucking money in America.
Right.
Way too much about money. We don't have an idea anymore. There's no idea. There's no idea of America that's driving things to happen. It's just money.
Mm-hmm.
It's just America seems to only exist now to make a few white men rich. And I know, God, it's a gross generalization, and of course it's an argument that can easily get shot full of holes. But I'll just put it there for now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that movies are being altered so that they'll be shown in Chinese movie theaters. It's because Hollywood studios want more money.
Right. Mm.
It's the same reason why KFC exists in China. It's the same reason why McDonald's exists in China. It's the same reason why Starbucks exists in China. It's the same why Google exists. It's the same reason.
Yeah.
It's like we'll do business with anybody unless they put planes in our buildings, and even then we'll have to do business with them behind the scenes. You know, it's you know.
There's a couple.
Anyway, that's kind of cynical. I apologize.
No. I mean, I think this is I don't know how you don't be cynical on this. Like,
right.
I worry a little bit that I've been drinking the Miguk, the American Kool-Aid, because I cover State Department, right? So I'm listening to Mike Pompeo and I'm listening to all that stuff, all the stuff that's coming out of the State Department. And some of it is jumping on, like anytime something in the news that they didn't report on happens that's negative about China, they send out a briefing, to condemn it, whatever. Because they want to keep China in the, in people's like purview and criticism of it. Because Mike Pompeo said that China is the greatest threat of our times. Do you think that is a hyperbolic statement? And number two, they have also said that former administrations haven't done enough to try to rein in China. Those are two very interesting statements. Because I am worried about China being not like from a stance of hegemonic power in the world. Who would we want? The America, the ideal of America that they do try to live up to in some regards in international foreign policy, or China, which is sterilizing, according to reports, their Muslim population. It's a scary.
Mm-hmm.
So
sure they are.
Do you that statement from Pompeo, is that something that you would agree with?
Well, I'll answer it in a minute, but I just want to maybe give a little background on what my answer is going to be.
Please
But back in, Nixon's foreign policy advisors understood this, and eventually Nixon did as well, that a united China will be a force to be reckoned with, and we might as well make friends as well as we can.
Right. And
the way to do that is to bind the countries together, if not diplomatically, then at least monetarily, right? So this coincided with the end of the Bretton Woods economic system in the United States and the beginning of the debtor strategy that ended with 2008. But the idea that America sells its debt, right, and buys goods from the country that buys the debt. So that's like the Greek economist Yanis Varoufakis calls the surplus recycling mechanism that's going on. So America has got a bunch of debt. America switches over from being a creditor to a debtor nation, trade surplus to a trade deficit around 1968 to 1970, in that time somewhere. And so Paul Volcker, who I believe was the head of the Federal Reserve Bank at the time, if not, he was in the Nixon administration in some capacity, I can't remember what, suggested that America start, selling its debt, and in so doing, buy goods from the country buying the debt, and then taking profits from the trade surplus country who's buying our debt and selling us its goods, inspiring them to put their money in the stock market, in the New York Stock Exchange, where America can get a giant percentage of the money money generated there, and of course where the investors in the stock market overseas can make a killing also. That system ended in 2008, but It's probably still going on to some degree. Anyway, so sorry, I'm trying to light my cigar again. Um, so China, a divided China doesn't have to be bothered with.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1949, when Mao took Beijing, took the seats of power, it eventually had to be.
Mm-hmm.
And this strategy, of course, is predicated on the idea that if China and America are dependent on one another,
Right,
monetarily, or financially, economically,
mm-hmm.
then they'll be much less likely to blow each other up.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen China for the last generation at least trying to find ways around this. China's itching for a fight. China is itching. Bear in mind, listeners, when Darryl, I think I can speak for you too, Darryl. When we say China, we mean the People's Republic of the PRC.
Yeah,
the Chinese leadership.
Yeah,
Chinese people are people. Fuck them or leave them. Who cares? They're dumb like everybody else. They're artistic like everybody else. They're murderous like everybody else. They're benevolent like everybody else. They're just fucking people. But the government is what we're talking about. And it seems that they are itching. The government is itching to assume the mantle of global power, to be in the number one spot.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, is China the greatest threat? I don't think so. To America, no. America is the greatest threat to itself.
Right.
It's this idea that all the weaknesses that have been exposed during the coronavirus outbreak, this completely broken economic executive system of government, a completely broken legislative branch of government, where two parties are just looting the country, making deals with corrupt business people. Not all business people are corrupt, but you have to be very tough morally not to be. I mean, it's just everything in America is set up for a sociopath to just loot the country. You know, we're seeing this in a spectacular fashion in the figure of Jeff Bezos. God, there's going to be 50 books written about this guy if there aren't already. He is a fascinating. I had a friend describe him recently as the most evil man who ever existed in America. I'm like, whoa, dude! But he made a very interesting argument. I don't, fucking Jeff Bezos doesn't give a shit what I think or what my friend thinks, but it's still very interesting to think that Jeff Bezos is enabled to be himself by this completely broken political economic system.
Because he comes off as a liberal, right? As in some regards, he's the owner of the Washington Post. But when it comes to China, they have truly exploited the situation. I sent you that article by Barbara Demrick, and I'm not sure if you had a chance to read that. She wrote a fantastic, one of the best books on North Korea I've ever read, Nothing to Envy. And something I thought was interesting in there was she was talking about how at the start of the coronavirus pandemic in their country, it was almost like the end. Like it was the starting of an uprising. And through their authoritarian powers, they crunched down on it. And now people are more celebratory of Xi Jinping. And the country is now taking advantage of the mistakes that America has made the whole time this has gone on, right? Like when the Trump administration was calling it the Wuhan virus, right? Which is interesting because what they were trying to do was bring attention to that. No, let's not forget that China is responsible for this. China is involved in this. We cannot stop doing that because if we start doing that, we lose the narrative fight over this. And they're going to reap the benefits. But because of how broken America is, people were going, you're racist. Because he hasn't built up, like couldn't figure out a different way to keep the focus on China except for going the Wuhan flu. Wuhan, the Chinese virus, and people are like, "Dude, you're a racist. You can't."
It doesn't help, even And I've heard pundits try to say that Trump is thinking proactively about the Chinese government's culpability in this pandemic. Yeah, but he disqualified his own efforts by being a reductionist fucking pandering jerk off. It's and I mean, let's just a very weak analogy here. Imagine Michael Jordan, the NBA player, in his prime, with a good team around him. Very difficult to beat him. when he was in his prime with a team around him. Now imagine, though, that Michael Jordan in an alternate universe gets depressed and starts eating Big Macs all the fucking time. And rather than just stretch, which he would in the regular season, like that was his workout. He'd just stretch.
Mm.
He wouldn't lift weights. He wouldn't do anything like that. Imagine if he started lifting weights with his fucking McDonald's inflamed muscles, and he's just a sloppy mess on the court.
Mm.
You know, he's still a force to be reckoned with. He's still better than most players out there, but now he's spraining his ankles.
Mm.
Now he's blowing his knee out, or now he's getting winded. Now he's huffing and puffing. Now he can only spend 20 minutes in the game as opposed to 40 minutes, whatever.
Mm.
It's like that's what America is like right now. It's not the fault of Antifa or Black Lives Matter or Trump supporters or MAGA folks or, whatever, or Karens and Chads and whatever else you want to call people. It's the fault of everyone. Everyone in America is in some way responsible for the way it is now. I'm flabbergasted by how people just don't. People talk about money all the goddamn time. Money is a tool, folks. It's a tool. It's not the root of all evil. It's not. It's not the reason for being. It's not the modus operandi. It's a tool.
Right.
It's a tool.
Tools are benign.
It's not why you get up in the morning.
Mm.
You get up in the morning to live. You get up in the morning to live. That's why you get up in the morning. You don't get up in the morning to make money. But that's what America is. America is a giant. I love it. James Baldwin once called it the giant Westinghouse, which is a way of saying that it's a giant business concern. At least that's how I interpret it.
Westinghouse, isn't that like a bank?
It was a man. Westinghouse was one of those. Westinghouse was an interesting figure, along with Edison. He was a brilliant inventor who bought into the financial system, hook, line, and sinker. Like he was at one and the same time an inventor and a businessman. And anyone who did that, it's like trying to maintain a beatific attitude about human life while being a murderer.
Right.
It's very hard to do both without leaning to one side, as it were. But anyway, it's just if a lot of people for various reasons have stopped believing in their own country, in America, it's because America has become the projection of pecuniary gain.
Mm.
It's become a giant marketplace. Everything is commodified. Like literally everything is commodified. Education,
mm-hmm.
healthcare,
prisons,
your data, prisons.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has become commodified.
Everything's about dollars, right? There's
everything. Every fucking thing. Mm-hmm. And if it isn't wholly about dollars, then it's mostly about dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Like love, here, go on this fucking website and
mm-hmm.
find the love of your life. Go fuck yourself.
Right. And
go fuck yourself with your fucking phony horseshit. It's a money-making scheme.
Right.
It's not about connecting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the difficult, joyous,
mm-hmm.
sweaty, bloody, hopeful business of trying to find another person to become one with.
Mm-hmm.
It's about some fucking douchebag in Silicon Valley making a fucking killing.
That's
what it's about.
That's an interesting comparison, because when you look at China, they have similar apps and similar programs, but they're not centered on money to the same degree or in the same fashion.
Because literally everybody in China 40 years ago was a peasant.
Right.
They suffered. The Chinese people are probably more tied to one another than Americans are through the bond of mutual suffering. Because when you suffer, you seek help. You have help around you in a village, in a family, in a town, And it's again, I know I'm probably romanticizing.
But you're also talking about the people as well, not
I'm talking
The
about the
government,
people.
yeah,
Not the government is a whole other thing. But although, I imagine that Chinese people don't feel the same despair that Americans do
right.
because they are that much closer to abject poverty.
It's in their rear view window. That's what a lot of people say about those who are complaining about the masks, right? Like this is the most oppressed they've ever been, and so they're railing against it. Now, if money is to America, it's interesting because when I talk about China, I'm talking about the people like the Communist Party, right? And
CP,
yeah, the difference would that if it was money in the States, it'd be control in China. That would be kind of the equivalent, right? Like when you were talking about apps, I thought that was an interesting example because India kicked out dozens of apps that are Chinese made because their whole purpose, they make these apps, but they're really just about data retrieval and surveillance, getting as much information about you as possible. That's what TikTok is. TikTok
is that. TikTok is that.
But in America, people are just eating it up, right? And that's why America is pushing hard to prevent people from countries from putting Huawei in their selling Huawei products or having 5G made by Huawei, right? Because they're afraid of the surveillance capabilities and the power that China will have to control everybody. And so if money to America, control is to China in some, possibly in a redactive, uneducated way, but that's what I see, right? With the facial recognition. And it's just amazing how we went from 2008 Olympics, right? I believe that was what it was, the 2008 Olympics in China. And that was its coming out party.
Sure.
And
here we are.
And everybody was amazed and kind of threatened at the same time about all like the thousands of people, drumming, right? Like the force that was, and all in synchronicity. And we've gone from that to a China that, I mean, it's probably always been the same China, just the image of it has been constantly changing. And now we're at a spot where they are, like, there was an article today that's saying that America, because of the coronavirus, should be shut off from the rest of the world.
Sure.
And that's its way to be like trying to take another step forward, another step into the center of that ring. And I do find that very, very frightening, seeing what's going on in Hong Kong. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous, not horrifyingly ridiculous, right? Like 15-year-old girls arrested for having pro-democracy, pro-Hong Kong independence flags, a sticker on somebody's phone.
And successive party leaders have said all along that they're going to do this. It's not as if this is anything new. I mean, this is anyone who knew anything about the PRC knew that Beijing did not like the 1997 agreement, didn't like it at all. And it is in part a failure of past leaders in the United States and abroad. In not, I mean, Taiwan's next. I mean, anyone, the PRC is remarkably candid about its goals. We're taking Taiwan back. We never lost Taiwan.
No, it is ours.
It's you fuck faces in London and Washington who don't understand to whom it actually belongs. Again, it's. I don't remember where this quote comes from. I think maybe Edward Gibbon, but an empire never is conquered from without unless it has defeated itself from within. And United States has completely lost itself in greed. And I do despair for the future of free speech, art, creativity. But they matter so little already in America. I mean, you can say whatever the fuck you want, but you're still starving. You're still working at fucking a convenience store or landscaping or, working in a kitchen. You say whatever the fuck you want. It doesn't matter. You're powerless. Your government doesn't represent you. Your fucking your representatives will suck you off only as long as it'll take to get your vote. That's it. And it's just, that's one thing I really enjoy about the street protests going on, as messy as they are, is that there are some Americans who still believe that this country is worth fighting for. Now, notwithstanding the flag that was burned in front of the White House yesterday, or July 4th, local time, here in the States, there are elements of the protest that are like burn it all fucking down.
Yeah.
And that has to be discussed also. But I think the root cause of this frustration, this anger, this despair that's boiling over in America is that America is meaningless. It's not a force for good like in some ways it used to be or was, and this could take years to unpack that statement. Obviously a lot of horrible crime was done in the name of the American people, especially in the 20th century, but it's all throughout its history. But there was always a conceit driving it that America is a country rooted in law.
Mm-hmm.
It is an unfinished project. The 13th Amendment is just one example of how the Constitution had to be revised at the cost of hundreds of thousands of lives and generations upon generations of misery. But America was a symbol of hope, not only for Americans, but for people abroad who wanted to overthrow the plutocratic and kleptocratic monarchies and dynasties that had told them what to do, what to think, how to work, took all their money. It was a way, oh man, we overthrew this general. We hung him. We cut his balls off and hung him. We want to make a country with laws, or we arrested this general, or we forced this kleptocrat to go into exile. Mm-hmm. We want to build a country on laws now. We don't want the arbitrary will of one man to govern us. We want every man, woman, and child to be governed by the same laws. That's an American ideal, at least it was. Mm-hmm. It's remarkable, and the way to guarantee law is to nurture freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion in the citizenry, in the hopes that it would make them better, so that they're better able to choose representatives. That is totally corrupted. America has two fucking choices for the boss of the one branch of government. Two, maybe three if you believe Kanye West. But let's just, I don't know what to think about Kanye. I swear to God, I'm voting for fucking Yeezus. I'm voting Kanye. I'm serious. That's where I'm at. My man Bernie's gone. I think that a vote for I fucking love Tulsi Gabbard, but I think a vote for her would maybe take a vote away from the better of the two choices that exist. And I mean better. God, do I use that word loosely? Holy shit. But we had these two corrupted political parties fielding on the one hand an old glad-hander whose best days are behind him, who probably is going senile, not just from age, but from grief of losing one of his sons, losing his wife. And the man, I don't know how, when you're that old, I don't know how you keep it together mentally going through such tragedy as losing a child. I don't know. I'm sympathizing with, even though he's a glad-handing piece of shit on some level. And then Trump. Yeah. Ew. Gross. That's all I got to say about that, man. Gross. These are our choices. I mean, China is, I think, creating its own luck for sure, but the Chinese government is creating its own luck, but it's also stepping into a vacuum.
Mm.
And and maybe generously, maybe United States can lose its global position the way that Great Britain did, with great difficulty and a lot of
Mm.
soul searching. But Great Britain is still a fairly good place to live. It lost
Brexit.
its imperial
Brexit.
Brexit.
Right?
I mean that's so
See,
cool. But
none
even,
of these things are in a vacuum, right? Like all of these things, all of these issues that we're looking at now are exasperated by the foreign country's intrusion through social. They're taking advantage of like our country's freedom of speech. They are taking advantage of certain freedoms to try to undermine the country. Like a lot of these, Brexit apparently was greatly fueled by Russia. Like through social media, trying to distort, like trying to like score. What's the word? Something discord. So discord,
so
right?
mhm.
And same thing in America. This is happening now too. Trump was like backed by Russian oligarchs.
Yeah, he was. He
You know?
was. And this idea that he might have received intelligence back in March that Putin's one of his secret branches of government had
Mm.
actually gone to the Taliban like a bounty. I mean, on American soldiers. And Trump. And here's the thing: if I heard this about any other president, even George W. Bush, who I like as a man after his presidency, I think it's very there's something. Oh God, forgive the word, but there's something almost tender about seeing him paint a picture where he's very morosely
Mm.
walking and seen in profile, and there's the ghost of a dead Iraqi boy following him.
Mm.
Like the grief and the guilt that he feels over the war that he so vigorously prosecuted. Even if I heard that from about George W. Bush, like George W. Bush had, stood idly by while Russian operatives offered, but I would never believe it for 1 second.
Mm.
But I believe it with Trump.
You
He's
know.
done nothing,
Mm.
to prevent me from thinking that way.
Let me see something. It's very. They just signed an agreement to pull out troops from Afghanistan with the Taliban around the same time. And the Taliban said it would stop associating with terrorism, stop associating with ISIS, and we found out that none of this is true. That they didn't do
Of course
that.
not.
Like they were actually getting advice from ISIS leaders in how to negotiate with America on the agreement to withdraw American troops from Afghanistan. This is happening, and I see America then sanction Iran or sanction five. Recently, they've done. I mean, they've constantly been doing this, but they've been sanctioning like Iran's oil industry, and they've been sanctioning Venezuela, and one of the recent ones made me kind of morosely laugh, because how good are sanctions if you don't have international weight behind them? And
Right.
and they still have weight, but what I'm seeing happening is these other countries like Iran, China, Venezuela, Cuba, they're banding together, and they are creating like a coalition of countries that
Separate
are,
separate economic bloc. Yeah.
yeah, and they're just going, okay, do what you fuck you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it just makes it less powerful. And it's like what you were saying about law and justice. Law and justice only matter if there's enough people that believe in it, that support these rules. Because if you're one dude that says, murder is wrong or you can't do this, it's against the law, and you don't have any else believing those principles, then it has no power. And that's what we're getting to
Or
internationally.
or when if law too only, I guess this is stating your point over
Mm.
again, but law only matters in a country if the most powerful of that country are also bound to it.
Yeah.
And I don't see Trump bound by law. I don't really see him. I mean, I don't. He's not leaving the White House if he gets voted out. He's not.
That's the next big fear, right?
Oh, not at all. He will not do it. I'm calling it right now. You're going to see this weird specter of, soldiers going in and escorting out. They're going to. I have no doubt in my mind that American soldiers will do that. They won't go, oh, I like Trump. And even if they voted for Trump, they're disciplined enough to be like, all right,
yeah, but
sir, yes, sir.
Who aren't?
Get them.
His militiamen, right? You think that?
Yeah, well, they'll get their fucking heads caved in. I mean, the American Army knocks his militia out left and right. Easy.
Sure. No, I'm not saying they'll put up a front.
I don't want to see that.
You don't want
to
that.
see people in MAGA hats, people in fucking MAGA hats getting brained by the stocks of AR-15s or whatever. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see violence. God damn, if people, again, too, this is the fascinating thing about Americans in general. First of all, I don't think the average American is literate on the Holocaust, and the governments that enabled it and the governments that suffered from it. I don't think they're literate on its lessons at all, which is a fucking damn shame. But I mean, no one believed that in 1920s Germany, that this fringe party of anti-Semitic fucking nutbags would take control of the country, and Germany was internally weak. It was internally weak. It can happen here. It can happen, absolutely. Who would have thought that in Europe in the 1990s, genocide would occur? In the 1990s, who would have thought that one European country would be allowed to try to eradicate a Muslim ethnic group within Europe? No one thinks it can happen here. They think it happens in places like Indonesia, where there's always this racist idea that brown-skinned people are somehow more savage, and that it's a hotter climate. And fucking, it's no one thinks it can happen. Of course, it can happen in America. Of course, a bunch of crackpots can seize power in a time of crisis when the rule of law has broken down and people aren't living the kind of lives that they expect, and that's important. Christopher Hitchens taught us this years ago. Expectation is incredibly important too. When Marie Antoinette's head came off, the king's head came off. That king had been a reformer. Oh, he was a reforming. He had reformed the Bourbon monarchy, and I think maybe his predecessor had done as well, to allow a greater percentage of the French population to
Archduke
share
Ferdinand.
in.
He was
Ferdinand.
he was a what's it called? What's the term? Not a reformer, but he was a more moderate to the.
He was a liberal.
Yeah.
So he was chafing under his I think his nephew, his uncle. And he was chafing under his uncle's rule. Yeah. And he gets shot in Sarajevo and it touches off
the First World War. Yeah.
One of the worst wars the world's ever seen. But, Europe was ready for it, though. Europe was itching to blow each other up. It was a slightly different countries, but...
Do you think we'll get there? Do you think that this conflict with China may lead to... I've probably said it on this podcast before. One of the scariest, most intimidating quotes I've ever heard was I went to the Jeju Forum, and they were having a nuclear discussion about nuclear proliferation. They always talk about that at the Jeju Forum because it's central to safety on the peninsula, North Korea and South Korea. And so they had all these experts in the governments, various governments, and somebody, I forget, a famous dude from America was there, and somebody high-ranking in China, the Communist Party, was speaking at this event. and he would not reveal how many nuclear weapons they have in China. He won't do it. China will not do it. And then they were talking about the rise of China, because that was the name of the conference. And he said, no, stop it. This is not the rise of China. Maybe for you. We used to be the head of the world for like 1,000 years. We've only taken a backseat for 200. We're just going back to our rightful place. That to me is very scary. And not only is it very threatening, but also the sense of history that they have behind them, supporting this push that America does not have. What country has that? I find that very, very scary. And I worry that it could lead to a conflict.
India has that.
Mm.
India has that history, that depth, that historical depth.
Mm.
I think China's going to have a harder time dealing with India than with America, to be honest with you. Because again, India also has that what Koreans might call pikul hungry ethic.
Yeah.
Indians have that too. This idea that everybody in India was a peasant 40 years ago. That any independence, any sense of democracy, any sense of self-rule that they have was very dearly won. Very dearly won. Just watch, if you don't believe me, just watch Richard Attenborough's dramatization of the Amritsar massacre in the movie Gandhi. If you don't fucking believe that the Indians paid dearly for their struggle for independence, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So it's I wouldn't want to be Japan. I have to tell you, I would not want to be Japanese in the coming years. China has a deep blood feud with them, a blood feud that I fear quite a few Chinese citizens may rally behind. All China has to do is just show some footage from those days, and Unit 571, based in Harbin, northeastern China. God, just the ugly, disgusting, sadistic, psychopathic experiments done on Chinese people in that horrible hospital.
Yeah.
Will keep you up at night, as much as footage from, as much as the testimony of Auschwitz survivors and Sonderkommando will.
I don't think a lot of people realize the deep-seated hatred still from those times that people have, or maybe not hatred might be but the anger about it that people have towards Japan. It's strong in Korea too.
In particular, America is very strong in Korea, very strong in South Korea. North Korea too, I'm sure. Americans, but that's the blinders that quite a few Americans have. And I think now we're talking white Americans more than anybody else. White Americans believe that history doesn't exist. They want to believe that, history began in 1620 or 1776. I think because Americans can't wrestle with the amount of sin that's on their shoulders.
Yeah. Is there
with the wiping out of Indians and the enslavement of Africans and their fellow citizens?
Issue with maxims in America, I've noticed, and I wonder, like, "Make America Great Again," which, like, these words that are meaningless.
Meaningless, utterly meaningless.
Is it because I see it as a symptom of delusion? Is that
absolutely
something fair to what you were saying? Lack of history. The world starts here, and and they want to ignore the sins that they've created. Look at like what's going on with the Confederacy, the issues running around, the issues with race in America. It's not an owning up to the original sin of the states, and that was continued to be perpetuated through the 13th Amendment and all that. Jim Crow.
Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, any American waving the Confederate flag is a traitor. The Confederacy was a group of traitors.
Yeah.
Who would rather start a war than give up their way of life, which was rooted in evil. And I'm not going to be equivocal about this. This Confederate way of life was evil. And yes, it was more widespread than just the southern states. Yes, slavery is a national sin. It's not just a southern sin. But this idea that, somebody having the audacity to wave the Confederate flag at a time like this is somebody itching for a fight. It's somebody who is, the same motivation as those two fucking murderers who chased down the black jogger, Ahmaud Arbery, I believe his name was.
Yeah.
They chased him down, armed, looking to kill him. They can try to portray, oh, he got belligerent. Of course he got upset. He was fucking jogging. They chased him down, armed.
It's fucking
in
ridiculous.
A truck.
It's awful. Two trucks.
They were,
the guy behind him was filming it, and he put it on, like, thinking it's fine. Let the film... it's disgusting.
Truth out of the mouth of babes, I guess, huh? But it's America is thoroughly corrupted, leaderless. There's no one person you can blame. This is a very, very long process that is coming to fruition, where every single institution that hundreds of thousands of people have fought and died for over the generations has been thoroughly corrupted by money. Not by money, but by greed. Money being the primary means of exchange, but also sex, also rape, also coercion. These are all poker chips, if you will, in this gamble that the powerful are making right now. But money is the primary thing at stake. Power, of course, which, is obviously the overarching motivation. But we, the American people, need to recognize whether let me paint a picture for you here. I want a, shrieking, ghoulish college person of indeterminate gender. I want that person who cancel culture, social justice warrior, that archetype. I would like for that person to be able to have a discussion with Johnny Reb, Billy Jim Crow. I would like those two archetypal people to talk. I think we all have a common enemy. I think every single American we must believe that we're equal. We must believe that we all have common ground somewhere. And I think the fight that we all have is getting our institutions back, getting our institutions to work for us. Not once again, they never did. They worked for a few people, but to get that to universalize institutional protection and the freedoms that are afforded through stability and through representation. I think everybody from, an Antifa sergeant major, whatever the fuck, and a Ku Klux Klan Grand High Wizard, I think we all have the same fight. And if you want to cast a boogeyman, I wouldn't cast it at anyone. I wouldn't cast it at a Donald Trump or a Jeff Bezos or a Mitch McConnell or a Nancy Pelosi. I would level it at this greed that's suffused the country from top to bottom. Get your fucking priorities straight, people. Your job is not your life. Waking up in the morning is not about making a paycheck. It's about living. John Cassavetes, the American filmmaker, said it very hiply once in a French documentary of him, of all things. You got to starve a little bit. It's fine. It's fine to not pay your fucking rent. If no one paid their fucking rent, we'd have to rethink things, wouldn't we? Why are you going to pay your rent when housing market, value of the housing market and what tenants have to pay is being driven by greed, which it is. One room around Boston will cost you $1,600 a month if you're lucky. One room. $1,600 a month. Most Americans don't make that. I'm sorry, they don't.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It's just so now you can't anyway. But we're I don't think I can belabor that point anymore. But it's the idea that I think solidarity and unity with people, because we hate each other, not in spite of it. I'm tired of this rosy, we are the world,
right?
We are, this idea. Oh, it doesn't matter what you. Yeah, it does matter what you look like. It does matter. Human beings hate each other on that shit. But we have to turn the hatred around. We have to use it as an energy. I hate fucking a lot of people, but I recognize our common humanity. And I recognize that my hatred is only a reaction to my despair and my sadness. I'm using it to cover up the futility that I see around me and my despair and frustration that I feel in response to that futility. I think we can unite around our common dislike of one another. And we use that. And a few podcasts ago, I said sometimes the only way people from two different races can break the ice is by making fun of each other racially. That's their common ground. And once they do it, once they recognize it in each other, this common, fuck you, you fucking faggy he, she, fuck you, you fucking, southern cunt racist prick. Once you get that out of the way, oh shit, we both feel the same way. But guess what? We both want the same things, don't we? We both want a government that speaks to our needs. We both want to be able to make enough money to support our families and not sell our fucking souls to do it. We both want that. Let's start there.
It's interesting.
Let's start at a point of solidarity and work from there. Maybe we can't do it. Maybe we will set up prisons and start shooting each other and putting people, and maybe we will start raping and murdering and eating and burning down each other's houses, and maybe we will. But by God, anyone who thinks that that's the fucking way forward, study your history just a little bit. When it comes to Civil War is the worst war. It's the worst kind of war that is. Internecine struggles are bloodbaths, start to finish.
People are predicting that is a route that America is heading.
Not a way forward. It might be headed there, but it's not a way forward.
Now, it's interesting how we were to talk about China, and most of the time we talked about America. I find that interesting. This kind of mirror that we are holding ourselves up when we try to look at the so-called adversary nation, the so-called enemy. When we do that, it's ultimately looking at our deficiencies, where we fall through, that allows for this conflict to prop up. Now, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, please follow us, like us, tweet us, whatever, do all that social media mumbo jumbo. This has been another episode of Boozing Through Lit. I'm Darryl. He's Brett. We're boozing. We'll be back at you next week. Until then, keep scribbling.